We wanted to walk you through another Epoxy Plus Designer Metallic Epoxy floor installation. You see that the installers are starting off with a prime surface. Normally we recommend that you use our water-based epoxy primer, our EPE 300, and of course we always recommend that you do it in black for most of the metallic colors, as it really makes the color stand out. But in this particular case, the EPE 300 water-based epoxy was not used as the primer. This particular floor had a moisture problem, and of course we know that moisture is the enemy of floor coating. So what was installed here was the Epoxy Plus MVB Plus. The Moisture Vapor Barrier Plus product is 100% solids epoxy, but it is made to be a moisture vapor barrier, which means that it can withstand moisture pressure up to 15 pounds. In this particular case, after taking a reading, it was found that the floor was yielding about 8 pounds of pressure. So we applied one coat of the MVB Plus to the floor first in order to hold back any moisture so that there wouldn't be any issues with this floor. One of the unique things about the Epoxy Plus Moisture Vapor Barrier is that it comes in various colors. So instead of having to go back and again apply a tinted base, the color is right in the moisture vapor barrier, so it was rolled out, and now we can apply the metallic epoxy coating right on top. So you see that the installers have already started. They've mixed up the Designer Metallic Epoxy, the EPE 100 product. These particular colors are pearl with a little bit of titanium mixed into it. This is going to be a little different effect on this floor from what we've shown in many of our other videos, but the installation process here is still the same. We've mixed 1 jar of metallic pigment per 3 gallons of Designer Metallic Epoxy. They're working in sections. We know that one 3-gallon kit will cover about 180 square feet or 60 square feet per gallon. So they've divided off the room and they're working in the first 180 square foot section. They poured it on the floor in ribbons, and one of the installers is using a flat rubber squeegee. He's moving the epoxy around the floor, spreading it. You notice that he's leaving some bare spots where you can see the primer coming through. That's okay. We're not looking for 100% coverage. Once we start rolling the floor, then you'll see that the epoxy will be moved into place just how we want it. So he's moving it with the squeegee, and the other installer is using a small roller, and he's pushing material up along the edges of the walls, ensuring that all parts of the floor are covered. So you see the rolling of the floor has begun. The installer is using an 18-inch 3/8 snap roller, which is shed-free or shed-resistant, and he's simply just rolling the floor up and down at a steady pace. And this is now moving around all the epoxy. It's filling in any little voids that the squeegee left, and it's evening out the tone of the floor, which will then allow the metallic pigments to swirl around and create that unique effect, that marbleized look that we're going for. So another section of floor has been poured. Again, the installers are working in 180 square foot sections. You can see on that far wall where he's squeegeeing, you can see there's actually some blue tape on the wall, and this is actually indicating the different 180 square foot sections throughout the entire space. And so because they're working in these smaller sections, using one 3-gallon kit for each section, it's very manageable. And because the designer epoxy has such a long pot life or such a long working time, they're able to do this no problem. You see they're not rushing, they're just taking their time, and they're doing one section at a time. So we told you that we were going to demonstrate a little different technique than you've seen on a lot of our other videos. Normally we have 2 different batches of epoxy with 2 different colors. We pour them in ribbons on the floor, and then we blend them together with the squeegee and roll them, and you have a very large contrast between the 2 colors on the floor. In this particular case, the client was looking for a little bit more subtle variation and was wanting to see some veining or some little more accents to the floor. So here, a small batch of titanium metallic epoxy has been mixed up, and he's using a watering can with a spout, and he's going around the floor and he's just drizzling in some lines which will end up looking like veins. And he's going to do this throughout the floor. We recommend that if you're going to use this technique, that you have just one person do this, and that way he's going to put it down pretty much evenly throughout the floor. If you have 2 different people doing it, sometimes what will happen is on one side of the floor, the person will put it down much heavier than the person on the other side of the floor, and then you'll definitely see a very noticeable difference. So here he is, he's continuing to drizzle the accent color, the titanium, onto the floor. And it's interesting to note that all this is taking place about 30 minutes after the installation began. So the entire floor has been rolled out, and it's leveled already, and he's still able to go back and do this technique. And then in a minute you're going to see how he's actually going to take a roller and start blending in these veins so that they're not quite as sharp, but they blend a little bit more into the floor. So the final step in the process is to take a small roller and to move it over the veins in the floor. And this is going to help break up the sharpness of the lines and help the pigments to kind of move and blend a little bit more, so you get not such a hard look to it, but you get more of an organic type look to the floor. So he's just finishing up now, and it's taken about 45 minutes from the time the floor was started with 2 installers. Now, this is not a very difficult technique, but we do recommend that you do it with at least 2 installers. It's very difficult to do this all with one installer, so having 2 really helps, where one can concentrate on the veins while the other finishes up the floor. So again, he's just blending this in, and the pigments will continue to separate. That titanium will continue to move for the next little while in the epoxy, and you'll see when we show you some finished pictures of the floor, it really has a unique, interesting, really nice effect, something a little bit different that you can offer. If you have any questions about anything you've seen or about any of our products, please contact us at www.epoxyplus.com.